When life is more terrible than death, then it is the truest valor to dare to live. So, this is a quote from William Dale Jennings' novel, The Ronin. It's a quote that stuck with me the most after finishing it, and it really couldn't be a truer statement. In life, it's inevitable that we will face obstacles, some more than others. But the decision to continue on when everything is at its bleakest is truly what is admirable. And when we think about bleak times today, it's really nothing compared to what people endured in the 12th century of Japan. Those people were true warriors. The Ronin, a novel based on Zen myth, is a full title from William Dale Jennings' novel from the 60s. It takes place during Japan's Heian period, which was the last division of classical Japanese history, running from 794 to 1185. It followed after the Nara period, beginning when the 50th emperor moved the capital of Japan to Kyoto. It is a period in Japanese history when Chinese influences were in decline and the national culture matured. The Heian period is also noted for its art, especially poetry and literature. The author initially heard the ancient legend upon which his novel is based on from Zen master Nyogen Senzaki. Senzaki was a Zen monk who was one of the 20th century's leading proponents of Zen Buddhism in the United States. So the story itself is about a Ronin who selfishly goes through life. He's a bit of a dick. He leaves a path of destruction wherever he goes, causing death and great pain to almost anyone that crosses him. Eventually, the son of one of his victims vows to avenge his father's death, knowing very well that several young samurai have already died trying to do the same thing. At one point, the Ronin meets an old sage who's working to dig a cave passage through a mountain in order to benefit the people of the region. What's great about this character is that he doesn't stop his work or even regard the possibility that he could be killed at any moment by the Ronin. And as with all of Zen tales, there's a moment of illumination which falls upon the Ronin right before he tries to kill the old sage. His life will change from this moment going forward, and the story will take on a different direction. This is a half legend and half true story of a man who becomes a folk hero. And like with the knights of Western medieval romances, the Ronin lives a life of adventure and he follows a strict code of morality and honor. So to sum it up, I'll say this book is very enjoyable. It's fast paced and it's told in a way where it very much could have been a great screenplay for a movie. Jennings, after all, was a screenwriter, and he obviously had a deep understanding of Zen and human nature. He was blacklisted during the McCarthy era in Hollywood, and seems to have written this book during that period when he couldn't get any work. It's a rather simple plot, but it has a very deep meaning, especially when you think back on it. It's very much a rags to riches story where a Ronin slashes his way up from the gutter to the position of wealth, honor, and status. None of the characters have names. They just go by the Ronin, the lady, the minor lord, the young daimyo, and the old swordsman. I'll say the language does flow very nicely, and it has a bit of a dry humor. It's very much told with humor and irony, and it's in the great tradition of realistic Zen mysticism. In a way, the story also reminded me a little bit of the manga Vagabond, in that it's the same premise of a violent character that changes his ways after meeting a monk. I will say the book is paced very well, and it does keep your interest to the very end. Every event leads to another event, and so forth. I found that the writing is done in a way that gives a sense of a very surreal atmosphere. The message of the book is ultimately unexplainable, but reading the book brings understanding that could only be vaguely told through words. And even though Jennings is an American author, this story is authentic. He did a great job putting this story, which was originally told by Nyogen Senzaki, into text. And he also does it in a very entertaining way. It's also very Zen in how we kind of get the stories of several seemingly unrelated people but eventually they come together and in an important way. Sacrifice is paramount to enlightenment. It's definitely a book for the perceptive poet-warrior type. It's also great if you're real into martial arts and you want to just seek answers through that. The Ronin's journey will put the mysticism of Zen in a way where most Westerners will actually be able to understand it. It's also quite violent and it doesn't hold anything back, which I found pretty great. In fact, in the first 2 pages, the Ronin cuts off 2 fingers then the hand of a rice merchant, just for the crime of not being afraid of him after he ate all his food and didn't pay for it. And right after this, the Ronin steps outside and pees in the middle of the street. He then kills a monk who tries to put him under arrest and then finishes peeing. It's great. Some people will love this book, but not everyone. I found myself liking parts of it very much, but also not liking other parts at all. For example, there's this female character whose personality and development I just kind of found hard to believe. And what's kind of funny is I found the developing personality of the Ronin more interesting and likable, even though he's pretty much a monster. The information about Japanese culture was also very interesting, although parts of it seemed like a modern take on classic ideas. In one case, a nobleman selects bodyguards for his wife from a group of women that are trained with the naginata. I mean, that's great and all, but historically, women weren't using naginatas not until centuries after the story takes place. That was a bit sloppy on Jennings' part, but otherwise, he does depict the time period pretty accurately. So in the end, it's a classic hero's journey that features a cocky young man rising to the heights and then falling to the depths. Although simply worded and short by most novel standards, there's still a deepness of thought in the story that makes you spend lots of time reflecting on the nature of life, mankind, ambition, love, vengeance, and most of all, self-delusion. So, how can one get a sense of Zen enlightenment? If there even is such a thing as enlightenment, then this story is pretty much it. It's not the real thing, but in order to actually experience realness, you'll have to live your life on the edge, as in the razor's edge. So in the end, I enjoyed this book, and I want to thank Chris from the comments for recommending it. If anyone else has any recommendations, just leave it in the comments and I'll try to do a video on it. I'd also like to thank my Patreons who are helping to support my channel. There's a link in the description below. Thanks for watching.